Hey, how's everyone doing? Today we're going to be going over chapter 6 and 7. Chapter 6 started off with a guy named Thomas Hobbes. He was a 17th century philosopher that argued that morality does not depend on traditional props like God and whatnot, but it really arises from the practical solution of self interest. Um, and humans are all self-interested, according to Hobbes, and we all want to live well, but we need a peaceful, cooperative social order in order to achieve that. So when there's an absence of rules, we would be free to do as we please, which would lead to a dreadful state of nature, because nature it's very competitive, and when there's scarce resources, people will fight, kill, do whatever they got to do to eat, and act in their own self-interest. Um, so later on in this chapter, he goes on to talk about the prisoner's dilemma, and this was a problem that was invented by Merrill Flood in like around the 1950s. And basically, it's the dilemma is you have two prisoners. Uh, if they both confess, they will get 5 years. If only one confesses, the other one will get 10 years. And if they both say nothing, they both get 1 year. Um, and the reason that this is such a good dilemma and a good example is that it shows human nature, in that 90% of the time, I'm not sure the exact number, but a lot of the times, people throw the other person under the bus in order, because they don't want to be in jail for 10 years. And rarely ever do they uphold their social contract and trust that the other person isn't going to say anything, so they get 1 year. So um, I feel like you know it really depends in that situation the type of people you hang around, because there's some people that are actually able to pull that off and not confess, and they trust each other. But a lot of times, if you're dealing with like a criminal, trust isn't their main priority. Their self-interest is. um, and then later on in this chapter, he discusses the social contract theory, and that basically claims that morality consists of rules that rational people accept, provided only that others accept them as well. Uh, so the rules are morally binding, to facilitate kind of like a harmonious state, social order, and the typical rules that consist with a social contract are murder, assault, theft, lying. Like those are the type of rules that are usually at hand with the social contract theory. Um, but sometimes these social contracts, the rules can get a little bit stringent and get out of hand, and it can really impact the way that certain people live, because the rules may be targeting one group of people, or the rules may be prohibiting people's pleasures. And I feel that everyone has a right to pleasure, meaning like you can, if you have a hard day at work, you can do what you got to do to uh, you know make yourself feel better. I don't believe that people should be limited by a social contract on what they can drink, eat, or take. I believe that should be everyone's own decision, based upon where they're at in their life. Um, the social contract only really holds true when there's an enforcement of the rules. If there's no enforcement of the rules, then the rules are just going to be continuously broken. Um, and The social contract theory does not require moral heroism, as it consists that the rules that rational people will accept. I thought that was something good that was in there. Um, so the social contract theory helps us understand that issues about social institutions and some questions that are raised. Um, is it ever justified to break the law? And I agree that breaking the law is acceptable in some cases. The book touches on MLK and Gandhi, and I believe those are wonderful examples of civil disobedience and how that it just there's laws are meant to be broken. Some of them are, at least. And the problem with this, according to whoever made the social contract theory, is that it creates it makes the government or the social contract seem less legit when people are able just to break the laws. It's a fine balance. I personally believe that, obviously, thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not steal and all that. But in terms of some of the more abstract laws that we have that may not make complete 100% sense, breaking them, it might be in someone's self-interest. So ultimately, civil disobedience raises the important moral questions about the nature of social institutions as a whole, the legitimacy of the legal system, and the limits of obedience to authority. We all have free will, and eventually we may not be so obedient to that authority. So, chapter 7.1 and 7.2 was discussing around. It was about a philosopher in the 18th and 19th century, and it basically this arose because of the American Revolution and the Civil War and the Industrial Revolution. And during this era, it was Jeremy Bentham that proposed a revolutionary new concept of morality, which was about the principle of utility. So this principle was that it's not about pleasing God or following some abstract rules, but more about maximizing happiness in the world. And they worked to reform laws and institutions in England along the utilitarian lines. That was Jeremy Bentham. So the principle utility was revolutionary because it left out God and abstract rules and focused more solely on the happiness of beings in the world. So this challenged, especially during that time, this challenged the dominant moral tradition of Christianity, which held that human life is a gift from God. Only God may decide to end it. And when he's talking about that, he's talking more about the euthanasia, because that was a problem in around the time. Sigmund Freud was a great example of euthanasia. He had oral cancer, and he asked one of his friends to basically inject him with some sort of drug that just let him go in his sleep, let him pass away in his sleep. And with Christian traditions, this is obviously very wrong. It might be classified as murder by the people that are injecting Sigmund Freud. But I believe that in some cases, if someone's in a lot of pain and they're suffering and there is no hope, there's legit no hope, I believe that can be their decision, and that the guilt shouldn't be, the person that does the injection shouldn't bear the guilt. So there's that. And then this chapter also goes on to discuss about the war on drugs and marijuana and things like that. And that I believe that one was simple. It's just that some of the laws they proposed in those times were very a little bit too strict, and it causes a lot of people to get locked up that were maybe some minor offenses, and now they're in jail for 10, 15 years for getting pulled over with a little bit of weed on them. And I don't think that's right, because that's you're taking away 10 years of someone's life. And there's other drugs that the government was able to deem acceptable, like caffeine and nicotine and alcohol, when those things are definitely more harmful than some of the Schedule 1 drugs that they have on there. Another example that they have going on right now is they're trying to get rid of TRT, they're making it harder. and I just believe that people should be able to take what they want to take, and that you have a right to pleasure. But yeah, so that was chapter 7. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything. The view on animals. So with animals, it's the same concept, that it's about with utilitarianism, that it's about their happiness. And if they're dead, it's okay to eat them and use their skin as clothes and all that. However, they shouldn't be suffering, and that's the main concept there, is that if they're suffering, and like unfortunately a lot of big farms have that, where they're just packed together, that's not right. But anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you have a great weekend.